I stood rooted to the spot as Iris swept into my workspace, a neat line of executives trailing behind her like obedient ducklings. 23 years old, business degree barely dry, while I'd spent more than twice that time building our client portfolio from the ground up. Everyone, I'd like to introduce Mona, who will be handling our legacy accounts, she announced, gesturing toward me the way one might present an outdated office printer. From now on, she reports directly to me. The room went dead quiet. No one met my eyes. Not Trent from legal, not Kip from accounting, not even Darlene, who'd shared lunch with me every Wednesday for 10 years. They studied shoes, tablets, the ceiling, anything but my face. We need fresh energy in the European markets, our CEO said, his hand resting comfortably on Iris's shoulder. Mona can help you understand our history while you lead us forward. I was being turned into history while I was still breathing. The corner desk will be yours, Iris added, pointing toward a cramped space near the supply closet. I need this office cleared by lunch. My office, the room that had seen countless late nights and breakthroughs. The walls still held the thank you letter from our biggest client after I'd saved their campaign during a natural disaster. Understood, I said, my voice steadier than my hands. 3 hours later, I watched maintenance carry my achievement plaques away in a cardboard box while Iris supervised the placement of abstract art on my former walls. The bulky desk goes too. It's positively ancient. The same desk my team had gifted me after we'd won Department of the Year. My new workspace came with a wobbly chair and a computer that wheezed on startup. My phone rang. Howie, my direct report for 8 years. Mona, I'm sorry, but Iris has called a team meeting in the Willow Room. When? Right now. She said it's just for the team leads. I was being excluded from a meeting with my own team? The threat was unmistakable. Anything else? I asked quietly. Yes, the Winterman presentation tomorrow. I'll handle it. The Winterman Group, my client for 16 years. Their CEO had specifically requested me. Oliver asked for me to present. I spoke with Oliver this morning. He understands the new direction. She was stripping everything away. My role, my relationships, my reputation. That's all, she said, attention already back on her phone. I walked out, passing the glass-walled conference room where my team still sat in their meeting. They fell silent as I passed, eyes sliding away. Whatever Iris had told them had changed something fundamental. At my cramped desk, a new email waited from HR. Performance Improvement Plan. Confidential. A formal PIP. The first step toward termination. The document cited resistance to new leadership and territorial behavior. I'd given 2 decades to this company, delayed having children, worked through pneumonia twice, missed my grandfather's funeral to save a key account. Now I was being pushed out by someone who'd built her entire strategy on my work. I shut down my computer, grabbed my bag, and left without saying goodbye. In my car, I sat motionless for 20 minutes, staring at nothing as a strange calm replaced the shock. They thought they were watching a woman being erased. They expected tears, anger, a resignation letter. They had no idea who they were dealing with. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't vent. I opened my personal laptop and started working. Not on my resume, not on a complaint. On a file, one very specific file that would change everything. Before I tell you what happened next, thank you for starting this journey with me. If the injustice is already hitting hard, consider liking this video and subscribing. Trust me, what comes next is something you won't want to miss. The quiet revenge of a woman underestimated for the last time. My name is Mona Teller, and until 3 weeks ago, I was the Senior Director of International Growth at a marketing company that had just merged with its biggest competitor. The merger brought changes, but none of us expected a newcomer to be placed directly above me without transition. I'd joined straight out of college when we occupied half a drafty floor downtown. We now had offices in 11 countries. I'd personally opened 7. My team respected me because I earned it. When Bella's mother got cancer, I rearranged schedules so she could drive her to treatment. When Penn's apartment flooded, I helped him find housing. When Howie struggled with his first major pitch, I stayed late for a week until he nailed it. I knew their kids' names, their anniversaries, their dreams beyond this company. Iris knew none of that. To her, people were resources, chess pieces. During her second week, she called Howie into her office. He emerged an hour later, avoiding my eyes. The next day, he presented a new Nordic strategy I'd been mentoring him on for months, now reframed as his individual breakthrough under Iris's leadership. The same thing happened with Bella, with Penn. One by one, collaborative projects became solo successes under Iris's guidance. "She asked about your management style," Darlene whispered during our now awkward Wednesday lunch. "If you micromanage, take credit, resist innovation." What did she say? Darlene looked down. I tried to be diplomatic, but Mona, she records everything. Her phone was on the table the whole time. Iris wasn't just rewriting the present, she was revising the past. By week 3, my team stopped coming to me. Emails went unanswered, calendar invites vanished. I was being ghosted inside my own department. The final blow came when Oliver from Winterman called me confused. Iris had told them I was shifting to strategy. "After 16 years without a handover, it's sudden," he said. "We requested you in our renewal. If you're not involved, we'll reconsider." When I raised it with the CEO, he waved it off. "Iris has innovative ideas. Give her a chance." That evening, I watched through the conference room glass as Iris presented my European strategy. My slides, my data, her name on the cover. The executives applauded. I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. I'd been playing by rules that no longer applied. So I went home, pulled out my external hard drive, and searched 15 years of backups. Not for revenge, but because I'd always believed in protecting institutional memory. What I found stunned me. I worked through the night. By morning, my hands trembled. Iris had made a critical mistake. She thought my power came from my title. It didn't. It came from knowing everything. I arrived before the receptionist, before cleaning finished, and placed a single manila folder on Iris's desk. "For your review, historical growth, strategy, outcomes." Then I left for my only remaining client call. When I returned, the office buzzed. Guards stood near the executive wing. "What did you do?" Darlene whispered. "I shared context," I replied. "Iris ran screaming into the CEO's office. Security came." I sat at my desk, calm. At noon, an email arrived. "Executive conference room, immediate." Gerald sat at the head of the table with legal and HR. Iris was gone. "The file you left, where did you get it?" "Company archives, public records." "You're alleging—" "I compiled data," I corrected. "The patterns speak." "You're claiming Iris implemented strategies that collapsed her last company and is repeating them here." "Yes," I said. "The data supports that conclusion." "Yes."
"That's absurd," Wilma cut in. "Why would anyone deliberately sabotage their own employer?" I met her gaze evenly. 3 months before her previous company declared bankruptcy, Iris received a substantial payment from an investment group that later acquired their client list for pennies on the dollar. The same investment group now owns 30% of our company following the merger. Silence settled over the room. "You understand what you're implying?" Gerald asked quietly. "I'm not implying anything," I said. "I'm showing you numbers, dates, and transactions that exist in the public record." The HR director cleared her throat. Iris claims you're retaliating because of the performance improvement plan, that you fabricated this conspiracy theory. I opened my laptop. Would you like to see the original sources? I've indexed everything. Gerald's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then stood abruptly. Wait here. When the door closed behind the three of them, I remained perfectly still. Through the glass wall, I could see them huddled with several executives I didn't recognize, likely from our parent company. 20 minutes later, Gerald returned alone, looking 10 years older. Iris has been suspended pending investigation, he said, sinking into his chair. The Merger Oversight Committee is flying in tonight. I see. He studied me with new eyes. You've been with us 20 years. 22, actually. Why didn't you come to me directly with this information? I considered my answer carefully. Would you have believed me over the rising star who promised to double our European market share in 6 months? His silence answered for him. You authorized her to put me on a performance improvement plan after 20 years of exemplary reviews. You allowed her to dismantle my team without consultation. You applauded when she presented my strategies as her own.
He winced. You thought she represented the future and I was part of the past. I finished for him. That's human nature, Gerald. We're dazzled by novelty. What do you want, Mona? Excuse me? To make this right, what do you want? Your old position back? Iris's job? I almost laughed. I don't want her job. Then what? I want respect, not just for me, but for everyone who builds something valuable in this company. I want leadership that values institutional knowledge alongside innovation. I want credit given where it's due. Gerald nodded slowly. That's reasonable. And I want Oliver's account back today, before their contract reconsideration deadline. Done. I stood to leave, but Gerald stopped me. The file. How long have you been working on it? I haven't been working on it at all, I replied. I simply pay attention. I always have. As I left the executive floor, my phone chimed with messages from team members who'd suddenly remembered my existence. I ignored them all. At my desk, Darlene was waiting. Shh. Security took Iris's laptop, she whispered. They're scanning her emails. What's happening? A correction, I said simply. By evening, Iris's name had vanished from the company directory. Her office, my former office, sat empty, the abstract art already removed from the walls. At home that night, I poured a glass of wine and finally let myself process the day. My hands shook slightly as the adrenaline faded. My phone rang, an unknown number. Hello? Is this Mona Teller? A woman asked. Yes. This is Charlotte Weber, chairperson of the Merger Oversight Committee. I'd like to discuss your findings in person tomorrow morning. My stomach tightened. I should inform you that Iris has retained legal counsel, she continued. She's claiming wrongful termination and defamation. There it was, the counterattack. Of course Iris wouldn't go quietly. I understand, I said, keeping my voice neutral. The information you compiled is concerning, but her legal team is questioning your methods and motives. Everything in that file can be independently verified. So you say. Her tone cooled. We'll need to examine this thoroughly. In the meantime, I've instructed Gerald to place you on administrative leave. The room seemed to tilt. Administrative leave? On what grounds? It's standard procedure during an investigation of this nature. We need to ensure there's no perception of conflict while we review both sides. Both sides, as if this were a simple disagreement. I see, I managed. We'll expect you at 9 tomorrow. Please bring all relevant materials. After hanging up, I sat motionless, staring at the wall. Administrative leave, the same status as Iris. In one move, they'd equalized us, accuser and accused. My doorbell rang, startling me. Through the peephole, I saw Howie shifting nervously on my porch. I should have stood up for you. We all should have. I let him in without comment. Is it true?
About Iris sabotaging her last company? He asked, following me into the kitchen. You tell me, I replied. You worked on her presentations. Did anything strike you as odd about her growth projections?
He looked down. The Nordic targets, they're impossible without sacrificing long-term relationships. I tried to tell her, but she said you'd made us too cautious. And what did you think? He hesitated. I thought maybe she was right, that maybe you'd become too conservative. His honesty stung, but I appreciated it. The Oversight Committee is coming tomorrow, I told him. I've been placed on administrative leave, same as Iris. His eyes widened. That's insane, after what you uncovered? They're treating it as a personal dispute, I said. Her word against mine. Evidence can be interpreted different ways, especially when one party has powerful connections. Howie's expression hardened. Tell me what to do. How can I help? I studied him, his earnest face, his genuine distress. He'd abandoned me when Iris arrived, but he was also the first to return. Why did you come here tonight, Howie? Because I was wrong, because we all were, and because I've worked with you for 8 years. I know who you really are. I nodded slowly. Then that's what I need, people who know who I really am. The Oversight Committee meeting the next morning was held in our largest conference room. When I arrived, I found not just Charlotte Weber and the executives, but nearly 20 people, including Howie, Bella, Penn, and others from my team. Charlotte, a sharp-featured woman in her 60s, began without pleasantries. Miss Teller, we've reviewed your file on Iris Palmer. Her legal representation has provided a response, claiming you misrepresented data to create a false narrative driven by personal animosity. Beside her sat a polished man in an expensive suit, clearly Iris's lawyer. He smiled thinly at me. Furthermore, Charlotte continued, they've submitted evidence that you've been resistant to necessary changes, underperforming in your role, and attempting to undermine new leadership. My heart sank. Iris had prepared for this from the beginning.
Before we proceed with your response, Charlotte said, you should know that Iris has offered to drop potential legal action if you retract your claims and resign immediately. The lawyer slid a document across the table, a resignation letter, already prepared. The room went silent. I picked up the letter, feeling every eye on me. The heavy stationery felt symbolic as I scanned it. This is quite thorough, I remarked calmly. Prepared in advance, I assume. The lawyer nodded. We wanted to make the transition as smooth as possible. Smooth? I repeated. For whom exactly? Charlotte cleared her throat. Actually, I interrupted, setting the letter down, this isn't difficult at all. I won't be signing this. The lawyer's smile faltered. I strongly advise you to reconsider. Miss Palmer's counter-evidence is substantial. I look forward to reviewing it, all of it. Charlotte nodded to an assistant, who distributed thick folders. Inside were emails stripped of context, selective metrics, carefully edited statements. As you can see, the lawyer said, Miss Palmer has documented a pattern of resistance predating her arrival. I flipped pages slowly, then reached into my bag and placed my own folders on the table, one for each person. What's this? Charlotte asked. Context, I replied. The room fell silent as they read. These folders contained complete emails, full performance data, and notarized statements from team members who'd come forward after Howie spread the word. Bella spoke first. She told me Mona was being pushed into early retirement and that I should distance myself.
Penn nodded. She said there was a confidential performance issue and we should align with new leadership. Howie added, she told each of us the others had concerns about Mona. The lawyer's face reddened. These statements are coerced. They're notarized, I said.
each given freely with witnesses. Charlotte studied the folders intently. This still doesn't address Miss Palmer's claim that your file on her previous company is fabricated. No, I agreed calmly. For that, we need outside verification. I stood and opened the door. A man in his 50s stepped in, wearing a visitor badge. This is Edward Torres, former CFO of Iris's previous company. The lawyer leapt to his feet. This is outrageous. Edward sat beside me. I was terminated 3 months before the collapse after raising concerns about suspicious strategy shifts. When Mona contacted me, I recognized the patterns immediately. Charlotte leaned forward. Are you claiming Miss Palmer deliberately undermined your company? I'm stating the strategies she pushed were identical to those that bankrupted us, despite repeated warnings, and that she received a substantial consulting fee from the investment group that later acquired our clients. The room's energy shifted. Gerald finally spoke. We need financial compliance involved immediately. The lawyer was already furiously texting. My client rejects these baseless accusations. Mr. Torres was terminated for performance issues. His testimony is clearly motivated by personal grievances. Edward smiled thinly. Actually, I was offered a generous severance package in exchange for signing a non-disparagement agreement, which I did sign regarding the company itself. But that agreement doesn't prevent me from discussing individual employees' actions, particularly when those actions may constitute financial impropriety. Charlotte turned to the lawyer. Does Miss Palmer wish to respond to these allegations in person?
I've received several interesting offers, I said. Turns out exposing corporate espionage is marketable. Will you stay for the meeting? I shook my head. Some acknowledgments come too late. Outside, the spring air felt clean. I placed the box in my car and looked back once at the building where I'd spent most of my adult life. My revenge wasn't destroying Iris, it was walking away on my own terms, my reputation not just intact, but strengthened. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't tearing someone down, it's rising so far above them that they disappear from your story. If you stayed with me through this journey, you know this wasn't just workplace drama. It was about refusing to be erased, about patience, observation, and quiet strength. If this resonated with you, like this video and subscribe for more stories like it. And tell me in the comments what patterns you've noticed that others missed. Sometimes that awareness is your greatest power.
I've received several interesting offers, I said. Turns out exposing corporate espionage is marketable. Will you stay for the meeting? I shook my head. Some acknowledgments come too late. Outside, the spring air felt clean. I placed the box in my car and looked back once at the building where I'd spent most of my adult life. My revenge wasn't destroying Iris. It was walking away on my own terms, my reputation not just intact, but strengthened. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't tearing someone down. It's rising so far above them that they disappear from your story. If you stayed with me through this journey, you know this wasn't just workplace drama. It was about refusing to be erased, about patience, observation, and quiet strength. If this resonated with you, like this video and subscribe for more stories like it. And tell me in the comments what patterns you've noticed that others missed. Sometimes that awareness is your greatest power. The lawyer's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression souring. My client is unavailable at present. I see, Charlotte said, closing her folder. Then we'll proceed with a full investigation. Mr. Torres, we'll need a formal statement. Already prepared, he replied, producing a sealed envelope along with documentation outlining the timeline and transactions. I watched as the meeting adjourned. I remained seated, feeling strangely hollow despite the apparent vindication. This wasn't victory. Not yet. Investigations could be derailed, evidence reinterpreted, narratives reshaped. Iris had powerful allies within the investment group. This was far from over. The room emptied until only Charlotte remained, studying me with new interest. 22 years at one company, she mused. That's rare these days. Loyalty used to matter. It still does to some of us. She gathered her papers. You'll remain on administrative leave during the investigation, but with full pay and benefits. Standard procedure. How long will the investigation take? Hard to say. These matters can be complex. The unspoken message was clear. Powerful interests were involved. This could drag on for months, possibly years. I understand, I said, rising to leave. She stopped me at the door. Miss Teller, that file you compiled, how did you connect those particular dots? I considered my answer carefully. I've spent my career observing patterns in markets, consumer behavior, and organizational dynamics. Some patterns only become visible with time, perspective, and patience, she added. Most people would have lashed out immediately when demoted. Reaction isn't the same as response. I chose to respond. 2 weeks passed. The investigation continued behind closed doors. I remained in limbo, neither terminated nor reinstated. My team sent occasional updates. Iris hadn't returned, but no formal announcements had been made. The waiting was calculated, a familiar corporate strategy. Delay until momentum fades, until anger cools, until people move on. On Friday evening, as I tended to my neglected garden, my doorbell rang again. This time it was Gerald. "May I come in?" he asked, looking uncomfortable on my porch. I led him into the kitchen without comment and offered coffee, which he declined. "The investigation has stalled," he admitted, sitting at the counter. "The investment group is applying significant pressure." I'm not surprised. They're threatening to withdraw financial support if we pursue this further. The board is concerned about stock implications. And there it was, the familiar calculus where ethics yield to economics. "So Iris gets away with it," I said flatly. Gerald winced. "She won't be returning to the company." "That's something. And you'll remain on administrative leave until this settles." "Until everyone forgets," I said, "and then I get quietly phased out." He couldn't meet my eyes. "We are prepared to offer a generous severance package." "Of course you are." "Please understand our position. The investment group controls 30% of our shares now." "You can ignore attempted corporate sabotage," I said. "That's exactly what you're doing." He placed a folder on the counter. "The board meets Monday to finalize their decision. This is the best I could negotiate for you." After he left, I didn't open the folder. Instead, I poured a glass of wine and returned to my garden, losing myself in the honest work of nurturing living things. As dusk fell, my phone rang. "Edward Torres," he said without preamble. "They're burying it." "I know." The investment group reached out to me, offered a consulting contract to refresh my recollection. "Are you taking it?" He laughed bitterly. "No, but it won't matter. They'll find someone who will." We sat in silence for a moment, two professionals watching justice slip away in real time. "What will you do now?" he asked. I looked at the seedlings breaking through the soil. "I'm going to water my tomatoes," I replied. "Then I'm going to finish what I started." Monday morning dawned clear and bright. Instead of staying home as instructed, I drove to the office wearing my most confident suit. The security guard smiled and waved me through. Evidently, my access hadn't been revoked. The office buzzed. Conversations stopped as I passed. Eyes widened. I walked straight to the executive floor, where the board meeting was underway. Outside the boardroom, Charlotte spoke quietly with Gerald and several board members. Gerald noticed me first, his expression shifting from shock to alarm. "Mona, you're not supposed to be here." "I know," I said calmly, "but the board should have complete information before their vote." Charlotte stepped forward. "Miss Teller, this meeting is closed." "Of course," I nodded. "I just have one document to submit." I handed her a sealed envelope. "What is this?" she asked. "The missing piece."
The reason I was certain about Iris's connection to the investment group. Gerald reached for it. I'll make sure the Borg reviews it. Actually, I said, you should open it now. Something in my tone stopped them. Charlotte broke the seal and removed a single page. Board members gathered around her shoulder. Their reactions said everything. Is this verified? Charlotte asked, her voice unsteady. Every detail, I confirmed. I've spent the past 2 weeks securing additional documentation. Gerald looked physically ill. Why didn't you present this earlier? Because I needed to see how far certain parties would go to protect their interests. Charlotte handed the document to an assistant. The board needs to review this immediately. I nodded and turned to leave. Mona, Gerald called. Where are you going? I smiled for the first time in weeks. To clean out my desk. I won't be needing it anymore. As I walked away, I heard urgent voices calling for legal counsel. By noon, the truth had spread. The investment group behind the merger was a shell corporation controlled by our main competitor. Iris hadn't acted alone or for personal gain. She'd been a planted operative in a years-long corporate espionage strategy designed to weaken companies through engineered failures. The evidence revealed not just Iris, but an entire network of placed executives across multiple firms. My phone rang non-stop. Reporters, board members, regulators. I declined them all and packed my remaining belongings. As I placed my coffee mug into a small box, Darlene appeared. Security escorted the investment group representatives out, she whispered. The SEC is here. That was fast, I said. Mona, she hesitated. Everyone's saying you saved the company. I just paid attention, I replied. Are you really leaving? I lifted the box. My work here is done. My team gathered near the exit. Howie stepped forward. Where will you go?